Hey everybody. Remember when I reviewed Petey Wheatstraw, the Devil's Son-in-Law? I took that opportunity to tell you about blaxploitation films. For those of you who missed it, the short version is that it was an era of filmmaking where the movies were made specifically and only to go for the African American dollar. They were movies meant to get the money out of black people. That was the whole point of the genre. Not to say that there weren't some good movies in there, but we're not talking about the end result. We're talking about the reason they were made. There are other exploitation genres as well. Blaxploitation is probably the biggest and most recognizable, but there's a lot of little tiny exploitation genres out there. And today, we're going to examine the queen of Nazi-sploitation films. This is Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. Now, Nazi-sploitation is not a huge genre, but it is an interesting one. The basic premise behind Nazi-sploitation films is you take your movie, preferably with a lot of boobs and a lot of gore, and you add Nazis to it. And the reason you do this is to automatically give your film some cultural significance. Magically, your film transforms into the boy in the striped pajamas because you've got Nazis, and that makes it artistic. After all, can you think of culturally insignificant Nazi movies? Okay, that was unfair of me. I find it funny that almost every Nazi-sploitation film has got to also include a lot of nudity. To be fair, though, who doesn't find Nazis sexy? Liebe ich, so liebe. Ich weiß nicht. Yeah. This is probably my favorite part of the movie. Right here at the beginning, they throw this screen up to tell you what you're about to see is shocking, but it's okay because it's totally historically accurate. All of the characters are amalgamations of real people who actually lived, we swear. And we make this movie in the hopes that these atrocities will never happen again. I want you to burn this into your memory. This is the reason this movie was made. It says so right in the beginning. The reason this film was made was to remind us of how horrific the Nazis were, in case we were in danger of forgetting, and hopefully make sure that we never do it again. I like to imagine some kid somewhere going, when I grow up, I am going to start a totalitarian regime and conquer the world and purge it of everybody who's not like me. And then he sees this movie and goes, ooh, I didn't realize that was a bad thing. We open, as most historical dramas portraying the horrors of wars do, with a sex scene. I feel cultural already. This is our main character, Ilsa, portrayed by Diane Thorne. Now, Ilsa's got a nice body, which is good because she gets naked a lot in this movie. But that body is counterbalanced by the fact that her face, how to be polite, sensitive, caring, she got grandma face. And that juxtaposition can be very distracting when you're looking at her naked. Also, our first scene was a sex scene. Our second scene is a long shower scene with grandma taking care of herself. This film was made so that these atrocities would never happen again. So, the lover she was seen with in the opening sequence finished before her, and his punishment for that is to, he's never gonna finish again. He's gonna be less of a man. You get where I'm going here? Yeah. I don't have anything funny to say about this. And fellas, believe me, I'm feeling your pain at just the thought of it. So, maybe this'll lighten the mood? Hope that helps, guys. For all of its promise of gore, this film has a very interesting take on it. See, when you see women being tortured, they frequently show them just covered all over in fake blood. But when it's the guy getting tortured, like in this case where he's being neutered, they cut away. It all happens off camera and all you hear is the sound effects and the screaming. so that it happens in your mind, which I guess you could say is probably worse. But I'm grateful for the ones they shoot around. After that horrifying scene, a whole new shipment of women comes to the prison compound. So they're all stripped down and inspected. Now, before you start thinking this movie is all about boobs and blood, I want you to remember, it's historically and culturally significant. The opening title card said so. Were there a lot of pale, red-headed Jews in the 40s? Actually, quite a few of these women don't look Jewish. One of them's Aryan. And then comes the shaving of all the women. Jesus! This is just badly made porn, isn't it? Grandma? I think you're a little out of uniform there. Shortly thereafter, a new shipment of men arrive, containing our hero, American Man. Oh my god! How long are his legs? That's freakish! Is he walking on stilts? Grandma's gonna dissect you, son. Grandma reveals that the real reason for her camp is so that she can test her theory that women tolerate pain better than men. That way, when she proves this, the German army will allow women in more significant roles than the men. And she tests this theory by torturing a lot of naked shaved women. So, a huge chunk of this film that I'm not going to show you is various scenes of naked women covered in raspberry jam screaming in pain. I would argue that's the majority of the film, in fact. That is one fetish I do not get. Who finds raspberry jam sexy? After a hard day of torturing women, American Man is summoned to Grandma's bed. And believe it or not, this is the beginning of what little plot there actually is to this movie. American Man returns to the barracks. He's the first man to ever spend the night with Grandma and return with his manhood intact. And he explains to his friends that the reason this happened is because he has a superpower. You see, he has the ability to not finish until he wants to, if he wants to. And the fact that she couldn't make him finish just drove her insane with curiosity and lust and all that. This is our man. This is our hero. And that is his skill. This is a man who will take down the Nazis by being able to postpone his orgasm. After several more torture scenes with naked women, Grandma decides she wants to watch American Man having sex with two of her most senior female lieutenants so that she can analyze it and try and figure out his superpower. So she watches him have sex with two busty blonde women. Let's hope, as the filmmakers hoped, that these atrocities will never happen again. Here's where things start to heat up, because we actually have a plot, and it has threads. I'm as shocked as anybody. See, Grandma is starting to fall in love with American Man because of his superpower, obviously. Meanwhile, the female prisoners are secretly plotting with the male prisoners to try and overthrow the camp. And you add that to the fact that a high-ranking German general is coming to the camp to review Ilsa's work. With all of these things going on, you'd almost think you were watching a movie instead of torture porn. The general is shown a series of torture sequences, and he's really impressed with all the work that Grandma has done. And he shows his admiration for her work by yelling at her for wasting Germany's resources. Now, I know, it sounds like I'm being funny and sarcastic and oh so witty. I'm not. See, the entire tour, he says things like, "That's very interesting. Oh, that's good news. Oh, hey, that's great." And then after the tour is over, he yells at her for wasting Germany's resources on her own personal pet project. I don't know why. Meanwhile, a love story has somehow sprung up between American Man and a random female prisoner. Because what woman isn't going to fall in love with a man who's doinking pretty much every female German officer? It's going to be a hell of a story to tell their kids. So it turns out, the general did not come because he wanted to review Ilsa's work, or that he cared about Ilsa's work at all. He came because he wanted Ilsa to pee on him. Thank goodness. I was worried they were going to completely miss a disgusting, horrible fetish. Now, I'm going to show you the peeing scene because it's hilarious. I promise you, it's one of those ones that they cut around so you don't see anything. Almost all you see is her face. But, keeping in mind the sensitive nature of my audience, I am going to replace the sound of Ilsa peeing on the general with something much more pleasant and uplifting. So, this way, because you just gotta see her face. For the record, I didn't edit anything. That's the whole peeing sequence. That's all it is. Now it's time for our heroes to overthrow the German army. The entire plan focuses on the idea of Grandma letting American man tie her to the bed. So then he can get her weapon, and then the other people will get other weapons. Grandma? If you're in charge of a prison camp, you might not want to let one of the prisoners tie you up. I'm just saying. I mean, this is the woman who, after she would make love to other prisoners, would go on and on about what an inferior species they are and how lucky they were to even get to spend 5 minutes with her before castrating them. But you're going to let this prisoner tie you to the bed. Good call, Grandma. Good call. That taken care of, everybody grabs weapons and starts killing Germans, and for once, everybody has their clothes on. Suddenly, because the Allies are on their way and the German army doesn't want them to find the horrible experiments being conducted here, the German army arrives and kills everybody. I mean everybody. Just wipes the place out, including Grandma, who dies at the hands of a German soldier. Except somehow, American man and his new girlfriend escaped the cleansing, got over the fence or around the Nazi forces somehow. The end. Oh my God. I don't even really know where to start. I cut out a lot of this movie because a lot of this movie is just an excuse for vignettes of torture porn, which I have never, ever understood. I like looking at naked women. Naked women can be quite easy on the eyes, so I get that. I get that part of it. But I don't get the part where they're covered in fake blood. I don't get the part where they're screaming in pain. I don't find those elements appealing, and in fact, I find they take away from the appealing nature of the nudity. And I'll tell you this right now, I never want to meet the man who finds this appealing. I live in fear of one day meeting somebody who watches this movie to get himself in the mood, because that's the day I'm going to have to hang myself. This movie it's sickening. I also cut out a scene where one of the female prisoners is raped to death by a large piece of the German army that's settled there at the camp. I cut it out because it didn't have anything to do with what little plot there was. It was just awful. This movie's just awful. And you know what the second to worst part of this whole thing is? Is that screen at the beginning. Because they made this awful, awful movie. And then realized, you know, we're probably going to get protested and a lot of people are going to complain. So why don't we put something there at the start of the movie so that we can claim it's cultural? I'm hoping atrocities like this film don't happen again. I know I just keep saying it's awful, but I don't have anything else to offer you. The entire point of the movie is to watch women get tortured. Occasionally men, but mostly women get tortured. And you know what the very worst part is? The very worst part of this entire movie. There's more of them! It's a series! Ilsa gets reincarnated. She She becomes the harem keeper of the oil sheiks. She becomes the wicked warden. And then, I don't even have it, but there's another one where she's the Tigress of Siberia, because when you think the name Ilsa, you think harem keeper of the oil sheiks and Tigress of Siberia. Apparently, Diane Thorne just keeps getting reincarnated to do more torture to more women. Why? Meanwhile, the female prisoners are secretly, I forgot the word plotting, and I saw that I had forgotten it, and I really hoped I was going to remember it by the time I got to its place in the sentence. And as we just witnessed, that did not happen. Sorry.